If you're an entrepreneur, you've heard the word branding thrown around a lot. But what does it really mean? And what does it really mean to have a brand that stands out above the rest and doesn't get drowned out by all the noise out there? And how do you build that brand? Well, today in episode 101, you'll realize that I'm going to be kicking off a series of 5 episodes, starting with this episode today on brand identity. And my philosophy when I help clients brand style their brand or brand build it, that there is 5 modules to building a brand identity. And that's why there'll be 5 episodes in this series to really help you understand what branding is and how would you really have a brand that stands out. Well, today, episode 101 is kicking off the episode series of 5 with how to wear your story, because your image and the way you show up has a lot to do with your brand identity. But stick around because we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Welcome to Waist Up Wardrobe. I'm Christine Vartanian, a civil engineer and attorney turned personal style expert and image consultant. As the founder of Jade for All Seasons, I am passionate about unveiling the inner confidence of my clients by developing their personal style. But is getting dressed up still important in our virtual world? Well, that's where my experience can help with what I call Waist Up Wardrobe. Waist Up Wardrobe is a podcast for all things you need to conduct an outstanding Zoom meeting. It's about how to dress for the camera, but it's not just about the clothes. It's about everything you need to know to show up on brand and professionally for the camera. Join me in the Waist Up Wardrobe studio to discuss how to navigate this virtual world and dominate from behind the desk.
Hello, Virtual Nation. Thank you for joining me for yet another episode of Waist Up Wardrobe. And today we are going to be kicking off a series of 5 episodes where we're really going to be diving deep into what branding is. As business owners, if you are one or if you know one, branding is a word that you'll hear a lot, that's been thrown around a lot, but sometimes can be confusing and can be kind of overused. So today we're going to really dig deep into what that means. And specifically, we're going to get really granular about the different types of things that comprise a good brand and how to build them into your work and your business. But before I get started, I want to say thank you for being here. I want to remind you that we're on iTunes, so rate us, review us, if you will. We're also on YouTube. We stream through, you can watch us through YouTube, and you can comment on that over there too on the show. And a lot of people always say, well, we can't catch the program live. But remember, we are evergreen. You can replay us anytime on Facebook at the Waist Up Wardrobe page, on YouTube, and on iTunes if you just want to take a listen to us instead of not being able to watch us. So just remember that. We want this to be a dialogue. So comments, drop some questions, some thoughts in the box below so that we can have this conversation around, everything that you need to know with Waist Up Wardrobe, everything you need to know about entrepreneurship. We talk about all that here on the show. So I also want to say thank you to Rick Moscoso, my producer, who makes this whole show happen. He might be making an appearance or two, and there he is, making his caricature appearance. Hi, Rick. He has a thing or two to say about branding because a lot of the work he does has a lot to do with video production and photography and how to elevate specific brands and really make them stand out. So I have a feeling that he would have something to say about branding in general and just kind of shed some light about what he thinks and what his perspective is on branding and how brands can really stand out. But remember, this is a kickoff to a series of 5 episodes. So today we're going to focus on one specific area of branding and brand identity. But before I get started, I just want to throw out the question that many people ask me, what is branding actually? What really is that? And when it comes to branding, it's different than what brand means. It's different than what brand identity means. Branding, the verb, is sort of the process, the steps that you take to really building a brand that stands out. So it's all the products that you place in your product suite. It's the way you talk to your client base. It's how you look and how your website looks and feels. It's how it impacts people's senses when they land on anything that has to do with your work. So the branding as a verb is sort of the process, the steps it takes to really come up with a great brand. And so the brand is the result of branding in general. And brand identity, a little bit more detail, is sort of the elements that go into creating the brand, right? Everything you do, say, touch, express to your audience and to your sphere of influence, the way you show up, all those things contribute to how your customer, your potential customer, experiences you and the work that you do. So all the elements, like the offering, your purpose, why do you do what you do? That's a big part of brand identity. How you communicate to them, the way you communicate with them, the languaging that you use, and your social media. Everything has to do with how the brand speaks to the world and how it stands out when it comes to that branding process. And like I said, there's 5 modules in my brand styling process. There are 5 modules to building a brand. So it's basically 5 silos, 5 things that I pay attention to when I'm working with a company, whether they're a startup or somebody looking to refresh their brand. And the 5 things are this: brand identity. How do you convey your story? How do people receive you and feel the effects, the vibe of your story? Brand image. How do you wear your story, which is what we're going to be concentrating on today? Brand language, how you speak your story. Brand online presence, how do you spread your story through your, the virtual world, right? How you show up on a podcast, how your social media looks, your Instagram, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, all those things have to speak the brand and stay aligned with the brand. And finally, the brand experience. How do you deliver that story? How do your clients experience you when they go through a product or a service with you? So those are the 5 modules that make up your brand identity. And I'm going to dissect each of one of those one by one and kind of show you how I take my clients through the brand styling program in these 5 episodes. So the first one is wearing your brand story. But before I get started, I'd really, really like for Rick to jump on here and tell me, just from your experience, Rick, working with people with video, and really helping people stand out as a brand from your side of, like, your line of work, how important it is to build a brand and to really focus on branding, or really any opinion you have with regard to branding in general.
Well, it's a fundamental of branding. When I look at it, obviously when people see you, even if it's just a still picture or they see you on video or you're marketing something, you should always be trying to speak your brand or with the mindset of you're representing your brand. I'm sorry, representing your brand with how you look, what's on camera, and how it is that you are helping whoever it is that's watching. So I typically will already know a little bit about the client and their business and their service. And then really the objective is to understand, okay, how do I promote that story, that feeling, evoke that feeling in what you're seeing on camera? How do we script out something where you're not just showing up and throwing up what, the features and benefits of your company and like everybody else does, right? You're talking about really about yourself, the value in and what you're representing and why you're doing it. We deep dive into the why of why you're doing that. Why are you passionate about doing what you're doing? And if you can relate to people out there with that message, then those are the types of customers will stay with you for a very long time because they feel a connection.
Yeah. And so you're hitting on all these parts, all these 5 modules, right, of branding, right? I kind of outlined that at the beginning. And it's interesting because even though a large part of the work that I do deals with image, styling the person, the clothes on stage, off stage, in a photo shoot, you've been involved with me in many photo shoots where
Mhm.
you've seen how getting them dressed a certain way, putting them in a certain look can really express the brand. So from a photographer standpoint, like how does that do you see that as important, dressing and wearing your brand just as important as any other one of those things, the purpose, the brand identity, the language? Do you see that? How do you see that from a photographer's eye?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, just depending upon the industry that you're in, you wanna be representative of that particular industry and the way that you dress and the way that you speak. And obviously, the way you dress is very, very important. I think it's even more important for a still image than it is in a video because obviously you have some time to talk about it and explain yourself and maybe walking around. But in a still image, you really have to capture that one message with that single frame. And I- to me, that's more difficult than doing a video.
Yeah. Yeah, you have less time. It's just a snapshot in time. It's so interesting that you say that. I never really thought about it that way. But for instance, you're the producer for Waist Up Wardrobe in this
Mhm.
moment, and you've got the Waist Up Wardrobe cap. I mean, that's part of branding the
Yeah.
image, right?
Mhm.
I am not somebody that would dress my client in brand colors all the time, but brand colors can be a big interplay when it comes to wearing your brand. So for instance, today I'm wearing the jade color with my red earrings. And so those are my 2 brand colors for jade and Waist Up Wardrobe. So things like that can really, when people look at you like, oh, that is so Waist Up Wardrobe.
Yeah.
That is so jade for all seasons. Or,
Right.
so those things are also messages. In the
Mhm.
old days, ad companies, and they probably still do, use subliminal messages, right? To impact, influence their potential client. And so, in a way, branding and these different parts of branding, the way you dress, the way you say things, the way they experience the customer journey, those are all subliminal messages to get them to want to continue to work with you because they see you aligned and they see you stand out. What do you
Mhm.
think?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask you because we're talking about you're going to be talking about 5 different stages of the branding process.
Yeah,
Um, how do you go about knowing which one to start with? With a client.
that's a
I mean,
great.
I suppose it's different because if somebody's brand new, then that's you're going over the whole story. But let's say somebody they've been out there for a while. Their image just needs some updating and things like that. Where do you start with them?
It's a really good question. And it's a question many of people that approach me to work with me ask me all the time. In fact, I'll have people say, I have an amazing wardrobe. I already know how to dress my brand, but I really need help in really defining my why, understanding and connecting more with my purpose, and creating a tagline for the business, and really thinking about what my story, the powerful parts of my about page and story are. And so here's the interesting things. I really do a complete audit of what the brand is to begin. And if there's a strong module, like somebody really knows how to dress and wear their brand, then we don't start there. We start with you know, I like to start with the weakest module. Where are they lacking, or where could they be better? Like, where can we make a big difference right away?
Mhm.
And oftentimes there's definitely a module that stands out that way. If they've never worked with a branding expert before, there's oftentimes one area that stands out a lot, and sometimes it's 4 out of the 5 areas. So sometimes it's every area needs to be built up, especially with a startup company. But I always start with the place where they feel like they're not doing well enough. Like, people will come to me and go, oh, there's so many good things about my brand, but my website is just lacking. Can you help me design the logo and really lay out the pages better and make it more user friendly? Then we start there. And many times people, because a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs, so they will start with me just in an image consultation. We'll get their brand, their image all dialed in, and they'll see how great that process was. And they're like, could you up-level the other areas of my life, right? So they might not necessarily come for brand styling, but they might come for image styling. And then they realize, I need to get other areas of my life lined up. 'Cause that's what
Yeah,
I
that
do.
and that totally makes sense because I do something very similar to that. Um, in especially video production, right? It's funny how many people just kind of freeze. They have a brain freeze when it's like they're going to do a series of things, or maybe it's their branding video, and it's like, well, what do I talk about? you know, and I think it's such a ridiculous question, and but I kind of chuckle to myself because because I hear it all the time,
Yeah.
and that's where we kind of focus. I do like you do. We just kind of look at the landscape of everything, and then we choose the. I tend to go with the weakest part. That way, we can really emphasize the stronger parts of their brand.
Absolutely, exactly. And so this kind of leads in beautifully into today's specific topic, which is how do you, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, wear your brand? How do you use your image to give your audience those subliminal messages, that signature feel, vibe, style, whatever you want to call it, that exudes your brand, that aligns with everything else in your brand? Um, and if you were just trying to brainstorm this on your own, say like you wanted to figure it out on your own, the things that you should be thinking about is, what is my signature style? What is very much me? What does like certain things in my closet that I wear really feel like they resonate with me, that they express who I am? If I'm a bohemian, if I have bohemian style, if my business is sort of like loose leaf tea and Mother Earth kind of medicine woman, and your style is bohemian, then you see how those line up, and you look into your wardrobe and see what are those things that really resonate. And so that's a really good place to start about finding out what your signature is. What is the essence, the vibe of what you want to wear so that you can express it through the image? And, it's not just about the clothes when it comes to that image. It's about your body language. It's how you express yourself. If you're in a business where it's very high connection with people, you always have to connect with people. Maybe if you're a person that speaks with your hands, people might feel a little bit more, connecting to you, or somebody who smiles a lot can connect to people a little bit easier because you're in a people business. There's something that is expressive of your brand and aligned with your brand that you actually need to function and build a brand that makes sense and is aligned, right? How do you look? How do you self-care? That's another element of image. How do you self-care? How are you grooming yourself? Again, let's go back to that bohemian example. If you're sort of in this industry where you're like a bohemian, you have bohemian style, you deal with Mother Earth, medicine woman, I'm just using this as an example, then maybe you have a very loose sort of hairstyle that kind of goes along with that. Just loose and effortless, not too fussy, not too formal. Whereas say you're a lawyer, right? And you're in court a lot, a little bit more formal, right? Pulled back hair, maybe a shorter cut. I had a client once ask if having long hair reduced your professional gravitas in the workforce. And my answer to that was it depends. It really depends on your brand. If you're somebody who's in a very serious business, um, like maybe lawyering or being in a very conservative environment, then yeah, probably need to go for the shorter haircut, the more sleek back haircut. If you're somebody who is in a more informal, casual work environment, job, business, then you probably could get away with longer locks and a more loose haircut. So there are these little things that can express your brand depending on the line of work you're in and how you're supposed to show up for your client. And I'm so interested from a male perspective. Again, Rick, I'd love to hear your perspective on that, in terms of the type of business somebody is in, the type of business somebody's in, and how that impacts the way they show up, right? like my two examples here. If you are sort of a Mother Earth kind of medicine woman, I could see somebody showing up a little bit more casual, a little bit more loose fitting clothes that kind of give that vibe off. Whereas if you're an attorney or an accountant, and that's not to say that we're not stereotyping people here. There are fun attorneys out there. There are fun CPAs out there, but there is an element of more conservative uh, work environment to a more casual environment. And that impacts how you dress and how you show up for work.
Absolutely. And depending upon what part of branding that you're representing, or the message that you're trying to put out there to your client base, you just got to make sure that it's congruent with your overall brand, right? I always look at it from a professional standpoint, and I use examples like, I don't know if you started watching The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix,
Oh, yeah.
but he's a lawyer that's coming back. He's very well put together. Shows like Mad Men, the way they dressed back in the 50s and 60s,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And today it's a little bit more loose, maybe not quite as formal as that, but again, it depends on your brand. And if you're a bohemian woman and you're going to you're trying to represent a more formal brand, well, your clothes probably don't represent that, right? And so it just depends on the occasion and the message that you're trying to put out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that you bring up these examples of some of these shows because it's true. There were times when people dress a little bit more formally, but there are still some professions where you have to be formal. I mean, I remember when I was lawyering, there's some courts you walked into you couldn't wear pantsuits, and that was back a while ago. But seriously, like it was so conservative that you had to wear a skirt and a blazer for women, and it's so interesting because, like I was saying too, is I had this client propose this question to me. It's like, do you think having long hair lends me to have less, professionalism? And it really does depend. And that was my answer. It depends on the line of work you're in, right? And so we're talking about lines of work, but we're also talking about if you have your own law firm business, right? If you are somebody that's behind a desk all the time doing research, you could be in your Hawaiian shirts and that would be fine, right? But if you're showing up in court, you probably need to wear a suit and tie. So it's also where you practice, how you practice. All those things come into play when it comes to aligning yourself with the brand that you're representing, whether it be yours or whether it be the brand of the company you work for. So it's interesting too, because there's differences between geographical locations. So for instance, my husband went to dental school in New York. They had to wear a tie every single day. If you're a California dentist, you're in scrubs most of the time. So again, which way do you want to represent your brand? So,
I can tell you a funny story. Back when I was in the field, as a salesperson, Hawaii was part of my territory, right? And so when I would go visit hospitals and doctors and administrators. And of course, you're dressed up in a nice tie and jacket and looking very corporate and very professional. And so it was my first time to go to Hawaii to see these doctors and let them know that I was their new person to take care of them. And I go over there, I go to the hospital, and it's like funny that hardly anybody's dressed in a suit and tie. They're in nice aloha shirts, and it's like, well, he looks like a sales rep and he's not wearing a coat and tie. And so I met these clients and had a nice discussion. And then it wasn't until, I don't know, 4 or 5, maybe half a year later, where I started coming over there more regularly, and several of these people became good friends of mine, and I would take them out golfing and all that stuff, and we would talk about things. And then he goes, "Dude, the first time I saw you and you were dressed up in a suit, we thought, well, maybe you went to private school or something like that, because you look local, but you didn't have the pigeon. The first, I didn't have the accent, right? The local accent. They're still trying to pinpoint me." And then it came up about the coat and tie. It's like, you got to lose that. Just go shopping tomorrow. Go get your nice aloha shirts, and you'll fit in just fine. So again, in that case, it was geographic more than anything. to the very much extreme where I was just used to wearing a coat and tie.
Yeah. So see, here is where, how you dress can actually be a way of expressing yourself without words, right? This is
Mhm.
another way people read you, So how do you want them to read you? Do you want them to read your brand? Do you want them to read what you're representing? Do you want to read them to read your personality? That is exactly why clothes speak a language. It's totally different. It's sort of a different language, right? And it matters when you're in business, interacting with people, and you want to convey a message. So that's what I think is so interesting about this, that people don't realize how much your image can really impact the way people receive you. And so that is a great example. Great example. Thank you for sharing that. So when you go into wardrobe planning, right? Um, the thing is, when I coach my clients through this whole image building, and aligning the image with the brand, like I said earlier, you want to look in your closet to see the things that actually you feel are on point, that represent your brand really well. I had a client once who was revamping her whole closet because her old closet had everything to do with her corporate job from the years past and nothing to do with her current lifestyle now. And we like suits were never going to be part of her repertoire anymore because they didn't represent who she was anymore. So that's a great example to really being mindful and intentional about what it is that you're wearing so that you express a certain message, whether it's a message about your brand or a message about your personality, like Rick was talking about. Um, and the thing too is when you're in business for yourself and when you are entrepreneur, you take the stage, right? You are shooting video, either informal or formal videos. You're creating a brand portfolio of pictures like the ones that Rick and I create together sometimes for entrepreneurs. And you need to be mindful of how you are showing up in those things on stage. You want your stage presence to express your brand and be aligned with it. Um, you want your pictures, your brand pictures to be on brand, right? And the video to also be that way if you're creating a brand video or if you're showing up live a lot. So those are the places that are really important when you're kind of conveying your message, to also use what you wear and your image in conveying part of the message and getting people to know you and your personality and what your brand is all about. Remember, your brand, your business brand is your personal brand. You are the brand. So I often say to people, wherever you can interject anything in your lifestyle, in your life that is aligned with a brand, do it if you care enough to express your brand through everything that you do and touch and say, right? And give that vibe. So some people even choose to drive a car that's on brand. People choose to style and design their home on brand, where people can walk into their home and they're like, oh, this feels like so because it stands out as a signature brand and a signature style. So all those elements come into play when you're thinking about your image and how you want to dress, how you want to live a lifestyle that's aligned fully with the brand. So if you are somebody who's trying to figure out where to start, I would start in my closet. Go in your closet, look at what you have that aligns with the brand and what doesn't. And the things that don't suit you, they don't make you feel good, they aren't aligned with the brand, it's time to say goodbye. It's part of that whole clearing process that I do often with my clients, that get them to the real core wardrobe that they have that aligns them and makes them feel like every time they wear it, they really are in the clothes that are right for them and the looks that are right for them. Because your style, your image should be evident in everything that you wear, and everything that you do, really, if you're trying to stay on brand. So, so let's say you are getting ready for a video shoot and you need to dress for the brand, but you're not sure how. Again, closet, look for what you need. But the trick with videos, you want to wear solid clothes of deep, rich, saturated tones, because otherwise it could be distracting. Like bright yellows and oranges can be very distracting. So one of the easy rules of thumb, if you are, trying to stay on brand with a video shoot, for instance, is that you want to pick a solid that maybe is one of your brand colors. Now, again, I don't feel like to stay on brand, you need to wear your brand colors every single day, but I do feel like you should have a part of your wardrobe that has some of those colors in it. So, for instance, I have the sage top that I wear that's on brand for Jade for All Seasons. I have my red blazer I wear that's on brand for Waist Up Wardrobe. The two colors together are really both my brand colors, and I wear them a lot. I have a dress in the sage color. So I really do have a small little compact camera closet or video closet that I will wear that have my brand colors, right? So that's a really easy rule of thumb. If you don't know what to wear, but you want to be on brand, think about what your brand colors and wear one of those colors. That's just a really great way to think about it. And not only clothes, right? We talked about lifestyle, maybe the car that you drive can be part of your image and your brand. The way you design and decorate your house can be part of the image of your brand. The way you decorate your office, the way you style your background. I mean, I do that a lot with the Waist Up Wardrobe Solutions, where we get this billboard behind you, your set completely aligned with the brand. And we do that through our Waist Up Wardrobe kits that you can find through waistupwardrobe.com. And it tells you like how we do it and what we do to get those sets aligned with the brand. That's another part of your image that is important, but also self-care. So this is interesting because it's like, okay, how is me taking care of myself really part of my image? It totally is. I think the most important thing an entrepreneur can do and should do is take care of themselves when it comes to health, exercise, um, eating, nutrition, sleep. All those things are sort of the foundation for successful people. When you dial that stuff in, every success is even sweeter. It's so important. In fact, we spoke last week on our 100th episode with two of my favorite mentors and coaches, business coaches, and we talked about self-care as sort of a cornerstone to building a business and how important it is for business owners to self-care. I'd love to get Rick's take on this, but the idea of healthy eating and nutrition, exercising, sleeping well are so important when you are trying to up level your image, because and also grooming, right? So how you wear your hair, if you putting on makeup, for men being clean shaven perhaps, or having a tidied beard. Rick, I'd love to get your take on that and just this idea of self-care. We spoke about it, actually came up in last episode where we were talking about how self-care is such a huge part of our image and the way we show up. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a great episode because we talked about a lot of things, and the way if you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to come out on the way you present yourself, specifically, even more so on a video. You can kind of see it, maybe hide it a little bit if you're not feeling your best for a photo, but at the same time, you might capture that wrong frame. You might just not be energetic enough to get your point across. And so if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not fueled up for the time that you're in front of the camera, boy, it's sure going to sound in your voice, when you're trying to promote whatever it is that you're promoting. So we always make sure that we're not shooting too early in the morning. I always try and find out when is the best time of day for you, when you feel like you're best during the time of day. And then I try and schedule our shoot around that time. So
yeah. And you know what? You make such a good, important point. And that is with photos, right? I always tell I have a checklist, which is what I'm going to give everybody with the hashtag brand image and shine today. I have a list of things you need to do before your photo shoot to feel and look great. So it's brand image and shine, and hashtag brand image and shine. And, it's the easy checklist. If you're getting ready for a photo shoot or doing a video that's important that you're going to push out, it's sort of, what do you do 7 days out? What do you do the day before? And in that, it's all about self-care. It's, getting your fresh haircut, getting a fresh color, bleaching your teeth, and all of the steps of when you should do it. And one of the most important things is getting a good night's sleep because, and you probably have experience with this too, Rick, is that I find that when people are going in for a photo shoot, whatever they're feeling shows up on their face.
Oh
If
yeah.
yeah, if you are feeling anxious about being in front of the camera, those first set of pictures become trash
Mhm.
because you can tell. And until the person gets a little bit more at ease with what's going on and the camera and the posing, it takes some time because you can feel them not being at ease. If somebody is anxious, it'll show up. If somebody was grumpy before, like for instance, got into a fight or something,
Yeah.
it'll show up. If don't want to be there, those feelings are they show up in your face and your facial expressions, which is another part of your image. Have you had
Oh,
that?
there. Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, when I was in corporate sales, right? We would have a lot of these different conventions, large, huge conventions that we would go to. And in those conventions, there's some time set aside for nice dinners with doctors. And, along with those nice dinners come, a nice bottle of wine or maybe a couple of glasses of scotch and stuff like that. And so you always have to be very careful, especially if you're on the show floor the next day early in the morning. And if you're not feeling your best and if you're a little bit hungover, boy, your body language on the floor is just it it will it will communicate that, oh yeah, you went out and partied hard last night. Yeah, and so you just have to be kind of mindful of that and just enjoy in moderation and knowing that you have to be at your best when you do show up in the booth in front of customers or in front of video camera.
Yeah, another great point. I mean, sometimes, we end up in circles of people. We're socializing, we're building relationships, and we can, forget that everything we do impacts how we're going to be received, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So that is a really good point. So I just find it so interesting how the way you're feeling inside, it makes so much sense actually with the work that I do, how you're feeling inside can show up on your face, can show up in the way you're showing up. And it's what I say to most people. It's like clothes, the clothes, you take the clothes, the outside style, you up level it to up level the inside style. Because when you wear a great outfit, if you're showing up well, if you're showing up happy and excited and enthusiastic to be there, instantly your inside gets up leveled. The confidence, the way people are receiving you and interacting with you. So important. And the same goes for photographs. You cannot hide how you're feeling, when it comes to being on camera and even in video. If your mind gets distracted, if you like got into an argument the day before with a loved one, it can be very distracting for what you're trying to do. So those are all really important things. And self-care is so important when you're trying to build a brand because it's important for the foundation of you being able to get up every day and really work towards your purpose. And it is something that I really it's interesting because as my brand, the Jade House of Style has evolved, I always it is, everybody perceives the image consulting as all about the clothes. And yes, the clothes have something to do with it, but it's not all about the clothes. Clothes are just a tool. They're just one part of how I help uplevel clients' image. I'm a huge proponent um, for all my clients, mostly women, of self-care, being finding something that moves them and gets them to exercise, because without that you can't feel good, you can't feel strong, and you can't feel ready to take on the world. I can put you in all the clothes in the world that would that are great, but you need to kind of up level the whole person. And it doesn't have to be going and running a marathon. It could just be as simple as taking a walk with the dog in the morning. But it's so important for women entrepreneurs to have that self-care, to exercise in the way that they enjoy, to be nutritious and also have cheat days. It's not about being unreasonable. It's about living your best life, really. And I am a huge proponent of that. So health and wellness and food and exercise and sleep are really cornerstone and foundational to anything we do as business owners. And then that is if the first layer of your image. The second layer of the image then becomes how you present yourself, your body language, your emotional vibration, and then finally the way you dress. So those layers are everything to do with image styling, everything to do with how do you wear your story? How are you expressing it through the way you're showing up, not only with the clothes, but how you're showing up emotionally, right? How you're showing up from a health perspective. And Rick, I'd love you to chime in here because I'm gonna ask a question of the audience, but I also think it would be really cool to get your perspective. You ever meet somebody that is just a genius at their work? Like they're just a genius, right? But
Hmm.
they show up and you can tell they just don't feel or look healthy. Like you're like, wow, this person is like so genius at their work. They are world renowned surgeon. They're a world renowned um, coach in their field, but they show up and you feel like, God, they just need to get a little bit more healthy. Whatever it is that gives you that impression. I mean, I've met some people like that along the way. Have you ever met anybody like that?
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Even I'll just go back to my corporate days because there were sales managers or people in leadership positions that could have been more credible or more believable if they just took care of themselves a little bit. They just were a mess sometimes, and it's like, do you not see how you are in front of a customer? There's dandruff on their suits. There's food from lunch, hanging in there on their face, and they're overweight, and it's just a mess. And it's like, I don't know how you do it or how you even get any clients, but you shouldn't be talking face to face with these people because
Yeah.
you're just a mess.
Yeah, totally. And it's not always just about being overweight. I mean, that could be one, but actually showing up like with the untucked shirt, like you said,
Yeah,
with
right.
dandruff on your shoulder. I mean, that's part of the
Hmm.
grooming. That's part of your image, right? It's about how people are perceiving you. And
Hmm.
when somebody hires somebody for a job, I think most of us evaluate, do I want to be seen with this person?
Hmm.
Right? Do I
Yeah.
want to take this person to a meeting? Do I want to refer this person to somebody? And those things do come into play because it shows a level of actual care, right? If you're caring for yourself, if you show up confidently, that actually has to do with how you would take care of a client. People have to, if people aren't doing that for themselves, then how are they even capable or even how could you be perceived as somebody who could take really good care of the client,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
mean, at the same time, I've had to report to people that, I mean, without knowing them, they're, just haven't taken care of their body, but in the way that they dress, the way that they speak, they're very well dressed. They have cufflinks on their sleeves. Their shirts, their pants are held up by suspenders that you can't see, but dressed very, very professionally, dressed very nice. And their demeanor in front of, in the way they speak isn't totally reflective of how they necessarily look. And so if you're put well together like that, and you're conscious of some of those things, then you can pull it off, and overshadow some of those deficiencies. But you have to look at yourself and say, hey, would I want that person, would I ever buy something from that guy just based on what he looks like? Sometimes people will say, yeah, it's a great product, but I'm not so sure that I want to buy from that guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, and another good point is that, somebody could be super polished, but they also might not be trustworthy in the way that their mannerisms are, right?
Hmm.
That is why brand styling is not just about one thing. It's about image as a subpart, but there are other parts, right? It's how you convey your story. Some people can be very salesy and turn off the people that they're trying to attract, right? They could be dressed to the nines, but if they come off as pushy, too overpowering, that can be a negative and it could reflect poorly on their brand. So again, there's all these things that go into the brand identity, the five elements. And when I talk about, how you are coming off to the client. That's sort of that brand, that last module that I talk about. I'll be talking about in the 5th episode of the series. And that's a brand experience. How are people experiencing you? Are you making them comfortable? Are you making them feel like you're there to answer their questions, or like you're like you want to sell them something at gunpoint? Like that is also part of the brand. So if we were to distill it down to this idea of how to wear your story, what is your brand image? The things that one has to think about is how you're dressing. It's the easiest part, it's the simplest part. How are you dressing? How can you make your dress, your attire, feel more on brand? And the things that you should ask yourself, are you in a formal profession or informal profession? If you're in a formal profession, then probably you're going to be dressing more formally. A suit is more appropriate. If you're in an informal setting and profession, then maybe Hawaiian shirts, a collection of them, is sort of the way to express your brand, right? And the other question you're going to ask yourself, well, are there any brand colors I can incorporate in my wardrobe to stay on brand? Because brand colors can be an easy way to really stay on brand when it comes to the actual wardrobe. The second thing you want to consider is your self-care. Although I see that as foundational for everything. So honestly, it's like the first thing when it comes to image. So self-care, your health. Are you moving on a regular basis? Are you eating generally a nutritious diet? Are you exercising and getting enough sleep so that you can give your best to your client and build that foundation to really up level your confidence and your emotions and your emotional vibration, so you could serve people in the way that you really want to, in a way that expresses your brand in the best way? And one of the best examples, I remember having is, like, if you are a business coach and you've never built a business, like, how are you living your brand? You have to have been through that experience. If you're a pediatrician and don't have children, that's also a little tough, because, like, how are you going to relate to the client? I I suspect it's not impossible, but I think you're more likely to attract the people that you want to serve if you do have a family and do have children, or do understand how you are around children, or people who are maybe overweight bar in the health industry, the exercise industry. It's not congruent. It's not aligned. So those things are really, really important to the way your image is. And so you got the wardrobe, you got the self-care. And sometimes people ask me, well, if I wanted to get started on my wardrobe, how do I do that? Well, you have to build in the basics. That's something I do with my clients. It's like those basic things that kind of help you mix and match wardrobe pieces together. You want to look at the closet as is right now that you have, and see if something doesn't fit you, get rid of it. If something is not in good condition, get rid of it. And then you can start also building in those things that are brand aligned, like colors and certain things that you wear. In my opinion, most 90% of your closet should be brand aligned. It should have that style that is very much you and very much aligned with the brand itself. And finally, lifestyle. Think about how you interject your brand in parts of your lifestyle, whether it's in the car you drive, whether in the way that you decorate your home, the way that you decorate your office. All those things can really contribute to aligning and up-leveling your brand. A lot of what we do here in Waist Up Wardrobe is about brand alignment and image alignment for the brand, like building these sets in the background where people build sets that are basically a billboard for what they do. If you came onto the set, if you just stumbled on this video, you will know that I do something to do with image and clothes. So that's the idea, right? So Waist Up Wardrobe Weekly Wrap Up is the main takeaway here is that, remember, everything in your brand should be aligned. When it comes to what to wear and how to show up, just remember that the foundation piece is how you feel on the inside, right? Your self-care, taking care of your health, your exercise, and the way that you show up for people. A tip to remember is, go into your closet and see what in your closet can actually work that is on brand currently, like whether it's a brand color outfit or something that really expresses the formality that you use in your business. A tool is something that we're going to put in the chat with the hashtag brand, image, and shine. You will get my checklist for how you prepare for a photo shoot when it comes to image. It's sort of like what you do the month before, what do you do the 2 weeks out, and so forth, so that you can show up in your photo shoot looking on brand from an image perspective. And finally, action item. Well, go to that closet and find, this is the easiest thing you could do. Find a piece of clothing that you can show up with on camera or off camera that is in your color brand. So there you have it. Waist Up Wardrobe weekly wrap up. Join us next week at 11:30 on Thursday. We're going to bring you the second part of the series for brand identity and brand building, and tell a friend. Okay, so I have to jump off pretty soon here, so I guess we'll just go into the speedy recap.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. All right. You tell me when. I guess everything's ready to go, or?
Yeah. Let me just mute, and then you can start.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. If you're an entrepreneur or business owner, you've heard the word branding thrown around all the time. But what is branding, and how do you create a brand that stands out so that everything you put out there, and everything that you, I was almost so good about that one. Okay. I'm going to start over.
Okay.
If you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you've heard the word branding thrown around all the time. And so, what is branding exactly? And how do you stand out and create a brand that stands out amongst all the noise out there so that you can be congruent and aligned with everything that you do and say to your sphere of influence?
That'll work. That's good.
Okay. In episode 101, How to Wear Your Brand Story, I discuss how to do exactly that. How do you use your image to express your brand? And the Waist Up Wardrobe weekly wrap up, in a nutshell, boiled down to this. The main takeaway is that people judge you by the way you show up. So you want that image to express everything about your brand. You want it to be aligned with it. So if you're in a formal business, then you're probably going to dress a little bit more formally. If you're in a casual business, you're probably going to dress a little bit more casually. And sticking to some brand colors can help too, so that you can express your brand in the way you dress. A tip to use is go to your closet and find some things that you think are suitable for your brand, whether it's a brand colored outfit or something that exudes the formality that you want to exude, and really start building a little bit more into that and creating a little bit of a brand closet. And a tool. I give you a tool in this episode of a checklist. If you're doing a brand video, you want to show up completely on brand in your image. And what that tool does for you is it gives you a checklist of what to do to prep for your video shoot. And finally, action item. Self-care is a big part of your image. It's actually the foundation of your image. How you show up with how you're groomed, if you are looking and feeling healthy, how you eat, how you exercise are all part of your image, are actually foundational for your entire business. So action item, pick one thing that can up-level your self-care and just do it.
Okie dokie.
Good?
Yeah, hold on. Let me kill this.